Welcome to the scorching arena of valor and the crucible of courage. This is the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Here, in the inferno of life's greatest challenges, heroes are shaped and legends are born. Every episode is a torchlight of wisdom, casting a glow on the paths walked by those who've braved the flames and emerged stronger. In this furnace of fortitude, we'll explore tales of resilience, bravery, and the unyielding human spirit. Each guest brings their own spark of insight, lighting up the darkness and guiding us through the smoke of adversity. With Fireman Rob at the helm, prepared to delve into conversations that smolder with significance and stories that kindle the soul. It's not just a podcast, it's a beacon for all who seek to rise from the ashes and glow with purpose. So stoke the fires of your curiosity and ready your heart for tales of triumph and transformation. The flames are roaring. The stage is ablaze. Welcome to the Forged in the Fires podcast. Let the journey begin.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today, my guest is one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my entire life. He is a caring individual, one who's been very successful in his life. He's the founder, president, CEO of the Quell Foundation, has created something amazing for first responders, the First Responder Resilience Project. Kevin Lynch, thank you so much for joining me today.
Rob, it is an absolute pleasure to share this time with you. I appreciate the invitation, and I look forward to a very productive conversation.
Yeah, you know, I mean, you and I have got to know each other, and it was kind of it, and it all started actually. Let's go back to that because it was the 9/11 Ride for Hope that really brought it about. Give me the premise of what the 9/11 Ride for Hope, because that'll kind of lead into the other things. What spurred you on to do that ride of hope that went from ground zero to DC? It was an amazing event.
Yeah, that really was pretty amazing, an emotional event. You know, for big portions of that, especially riding into Arlington, Virginia, and out to the Pentagon and up to the Iwo Jima Memorial. You know, the genesis of that was really we had just finished all the filming that was necessary to create our second documentary, First Responders Sound the Alarm, and we were really looking for a platform to showcase it, and we wanted to do it in our nation's capital. On 9/11, so that we could really have put a spotlight on our first responders' mental health and some of the trauma and the compounding trauma that this population, a specialized population of folks, experience.
Right.
So, having done that ride and planned it out and stopping at firehouses and police stations and hospitals along the route and talking about it, I think really raised awareness. As well as shine the light on 40 dipshits willing to get on a bicycle and ride from New York to Arlington. So that was a great time.
And taking some wrong turns and eating a lot of food and having cupcakes that Karen brings to us.
That's a true statement. Getting through the gun firing zone in Jersey. Sure.
And that truly speaks to the volume of taking action, and that kind of leads me to the Quell Foundation. You saw something that was needed, you saw a mission that was needed, and you took action to make tangible change. What was it that brought you about to making the Quell Foundation something that nowadays is so important in society?
Yeah, Rob. As you know, and I won't share too much because it's now his story, but my son spent a fair amount of time in prison, and in that time, he spent significant portion of that in isolation. And when he was released, I did everything I could to get him in front of a professional that could help him mitigate some of the challenges that he had experienced and help him to move forward constructively in his life. But unfortunately, there just wasn't anybody available. And that really led me to do a lot of deep dive and research. Why can't I find somebody with with the resources that I had that could help my son. And so I went on and did a master's degree late in life and wrote all my papers and my thesis on mental health. And essentially, that's what I learned, is that there was such a dearth of providers that there's no way that we're ever going to be able to meet the needs of our society if we don't address that challenge. But also, I learned about the tremendous amount of suicides and drug overdoses that was happening, and identified a direct correlation between the shortage of mental health professionals and suicides and overdoses. So I made a commitment that for the balance of my life and for my professional life, certainly, I would work to reduce the stigma and normalize conversation around mental health, so we could maybe drop those numbers. We could, hopefully lower suicides, overdoses, and incarcerating people like my son with the mental health condition instead of helping them.
I love that. Now, I know a lot of people are thinking, how as an adult do you change that mindset? How do you, because a lot of people want to make change in their lives. So a lot of people want to make change in other people's lives. How did you, what was the mindset shift that you had to be able to, one, go back to school, but two, take on such a huge project while being a dad as well?
Well, I think that's a lot of it. There's a lot of people who are motivated to do things because of life experiences. I'm a dad, and, my son told me, people don't care about people like you and me, Dad, because I had been diagnosed with depression in 2012.
Yeah.
And he said, people don't care about people like you and I.
That's hard.
And that really upset me. So I needed, first, as a dad, to show him that he was wrong. And second, I had to figure out what I could do to change that perception, to remove that stigma. And I think that's what it was. But the bigger thing is that so many people who live with any type of mental health challenge think they're the only one. They think they're the only ones that can't get out of bed, or want to stay socially isolated, or cut themselves, or drink themselves into a blackout so that they don't have to deal with reality. And my goal, and as you know, is to essentially say you're not even close to the only one.
Right.
There's a lot. I mean, if you think about it, I believe the number was somewhere in the realm of, actually, I know exactly what the number is, and I think it's valuable to state it. In the first 2 years, in the first 2 years of the 988 mental health crisis hotline, I believe the number was 100 million. Actually, no, it was 10 million people contacted the 988 suicide and crisis lifeline in the first 2 years. So, Rob, what that number is, it's amazing. That's 13,700 phone calls, text messages, or chats a day for 2 years. So if your listeners or anybody out there that gets this information, share it, because you're not the only one, unless you had capacity to make 13,700 calls a day. No.
That's done. There's some people no. There's some teenagers that can make calls.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But what does that tell people? I mean, because a lot of people are scared to probably talk about it, because, in the fire service and police and military, it was and still kind of is to some point shunned upon. You seem weaker. You seem less strong. What is the impact that you have seen of people being able to tell their stories to help that stigma of you're not alone?
Great question. And it's a question that a lot of first responders, including, and I want to make sure that we clarify that, we're including our dispatchers when we say first responders, right? So they do feel, especially, that they will be socially isolated. They feel certainly that they're concerned with the fear of judgment, reliability, that they'll be isolated, that they could lose opportunities for promotion, job repercussions, the institutional bias that exists. But I also think, and research has proven, that institutional bias is generational. So there's a changing of the guard. I mean, you and I were in the military.
Very much.
And, in the back of the day, I can't believe I just said back in the fucking day. Back in the day, I'm sorry.
I love it.
That hazing was socially acceptable. That's just what you did to the newbies. When you get a new pin, you get your dolphins or whatever pin that you get, they get tacked on. But we've changed that, So I think that we're at a fulcrum point in society, in the first responder leadership realm, that there's a changing of the guard. So, part of the documentary, as you know, is offering a questionnaire at the end of it. And that questionnaire asks questions that helps us identify whether or not the film did actually do anything. Did we change perception? Did we change their understanding and their willingness to either talk to somebody themselves or listen to somebody who may be in crisis? And the results are overwhelmingly positive. I mean, to a point where we were astonished that we first of all, they were this honest, and that the numbers were so significant.
Now, how does like when you look at it from a perspective, and I'm going on some of my past experiences, the the fear and kind of the stigma when I first went for mental health, because I didn't want to agree that I had it. I didn't want to, admit that there was something wrong, and it wasn't a fit in the beginning. What do you tell the people that you have to keep going? It's not I'm going to tell you everything right away and then all of it's going to be okay. It's a journey, isn't it?
It is a journey. And, I like to recant a story, or at least a quote that a dear friend of ours, Chris Scallon, often says when he's asked this similar question. And essentially is, if you have a leaky pipe and you call a plumber and he comes to your house and he says, okay, it's all fixed, and he leaves and it's still freaking leaking, you just don't say screw it and let it leak. You find somebody else. You get another friggin' plumber that can come in, and you keep finding people until it's fixed. So there's what first responders do is exceptional. And it's not something that the general population understands, what you go through. When we see a fire truck or an ambulance or a cruiser on the side of the road or flying to something, we always think about, geez, I wonder where they're going, and I hope those people are okay. We don't consider about what they're about to see, what they're about to experience. And, I would shore that up with, another numbers, because I like to frame everything I say around this stuff.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Between January 2021, and December 2023, okay, that 3-year period, there were 147,000 sorry, that it still upsets me. There was, during this 3-year period, there were 147,000 suicides, and there were 326,000 overdose deaths, right? So in total, Rob, we're talking 473,000 people either took their own life or died of a drug overdose, intentional or unintentional. Right. And you have to ask this question to the general population. How many of those people did you go and recover? How many forensic photographs did you take and provide expert witness to? How many families did you notify?
Right.
I didn't respond to a single one. Those are the kind of traumas, of compounding trauma, every single day that our first responder community face. It's not normal. There's nothing normal. There's no amount of training, as you know, that will ever prepare you for it. So you have to prepare yourself. You have to train yourself to become numb to it. Or how do you mitigate that trauma? Because it's going to exist. Like Chris Van Ness, a dear friend, said, when I close my eyes, the inside of my eyelids, replay the horrors that I've seen.
Right.
How do we stop that?
Right.
So that's important.
Yeah, it's a constant. And you have the First Responder Resilience Project, and it's a project not, it's consistent. It's constantly going. When you put together your documentaries, when you put together the projects and stuff like that, how did you become different? Because there's so many out there. I think that was the biggest thing that, you and I have talked about this before. There's so many people out there trying to do things, but it's about having a toolbox of, in essence, abilities to be able to get through this, because there's not a one size fits all. How does the Quell Foundation help to be able to provide so many different tools in that toolbox to be able to help people to live forward?
I think one of the first things that we did, and nothing that I really did was super intentional. I let it happen organically. Yeah. I knew that we needed to make a documentary because it's the second one. And the first one was just on general, I shouldn't say just, it was on society in general. How do we help people understand that those folks with the mental health challenge are not just homeless or incarcerated or hospitalized. They're your next door neighbor, your professor, your firefighter, your local police chief. It's all of these folks. So when we created the documentary, it happened. We interviewed probably 12 or 13 people from around the country, and every single one of them easily fit into this documentary. But we were looking to make sure that we could bring it anywhere in the country, in the audience. Someone in that audience could look at somebody in the film and say, okay, that's me. That's my story. Or I understand that part. So there's a lot of boxes to check. But we also wanted to have some continuity in it. I wanted to have people that are currently working, those who were retired, those mid-career, early career, so that we could be relatable to a broad audience. But I think that it was important. The trust, I think, was the biggest thing, because them trusting us with their very, very personal story allowed us to share it on a national level. As you know, LA Fire and Chicago PD allowed us to share it on a national level, where the members of these departments and the participating audience could just self-reflect. We're not asking them to go fucking sign a piece of paper and sign up for counseling when they get up. We planted seeds. And these are just like, hey, you see that guy, you see that woman, they're telling your story. And here's how they've worked through some of that trauma. They didn't completely get rid of it. It's part of your story. It's part of your life. But how do we help you navigate it so you can live the best life possible? That's kind of what we were doing.
I love that. And there's so many great things that people can be a part of with the Quell Foundation. Go to thequellfoundation.org. You can find out more. What is the next iteration of Kevin Lynch look like? Because you have so many things that you do. You have so many things that you are a part of. What is it that your legacy? What does that look like for you?
I don't know. Actually, I don't know, Rob. I know that I love what I'm doing right now. I think that I'm at a juncture in my career where I need to step back a little bit from day-to-day operations and get some younger thought leaders involved. And get to a point where I've taken it pretty far. From a startup 9 years ago. And what's today? December 3rd? December 5th is our 9-year anniversary.
Wow.
So in 9 years, we went from my wife and I writing 16 checks for scholarships to, as an organization, distributing $3.5 million in scholarships to students around the country.
That's amazing.
1,900 scholarships, every state in the country, about 500 different universities. But we're working on a couple of different things. The next one is our nation's athletes at every level. We want to help young athletes understand that just because you didn't get a D1 scholarship, it's not the end of your life. And don't let it be the end of your life. If you have a career-ending injury, tomorrow is still worth waiting for.
That's huge.
That's one of the big things that I'll be focusing on as I let this, next generation of senior leaders take over for me. I'll work on that. I'll stay as the chair of the board. And I'm going to be really hyper focused on how do we get a broader audience, get this documentary, First Responders on the Line, to a broader audience, because we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg on this one yet. It's challenging.
Yeah.
The outsider trying to come in and say, "Hey, look what I have," and it will help you. We just need to get some more people the eyes on, and then start talking about it. So,
I love that statement that you're talking about. Tomorrow's worth staying around for. I want you to talk to me a little bit more about that, because it hit me when you said it, but it's such a powerful statement for people to understand. In your life, how have you seen that kind of a statement to kind of impact yourself to be able to be that powerful person, not only for yourself, but for your family and for others?
Yeah, I think you and I have been in similar situations. We've had some great conversations. There was a point in April of, actually it was July of 2012. So after my son had been released from prison, he was pretty young. He was 26 years old. I was a typical dad, but as a typical guy thinking, I left my job in healthcare in South Florida. I moved back up north to help him reintegrate into society. And I had a friggin' plan, and it was perfect. And I didn't have a plan because plan A was that awesome. So, but I couldn't find somebody that could help him. And in the absence of treatment, people often self-medicate, whether it's drugs or alcohol, whatever it is. There's multiple ways we self-medicate.
Right.
And Nicholas did just that, and he overdosed on drugs. He didn't die, but he went back to prison. Well, I didn't have a plan B. So I sit in the driveway of a home that I had bought and moved into with him to help him, reintegrate, as I had said. And I stood in that driveway and knew that he would never be back in that house again. And it had only been 103 days since he was out. And I have a very fortunate life. I recognize that. Very fortunate life. There's not a lot that I want for, but in that instance, it wasn't worth waiting for the tomorrows of my life. That's how much pain and anguish that I was in, and grief. I had never experienced a level of grief as I was at that moment, because I had finally my son back, and we were going to go golf, and I was going to teach him how to do things, and we were going to do all kinds of stuff together. And that didn't happen. So I ended up calling a suicide hotline. But, standing in that driveway that day, I couldn't see left or right. I had tunnel vision. I wasn't seeing my wife, my home, my assets, my children, and my grand. I wasn't seeing any of that. All I felt was grief that had to stop right now. So I don't know how I had the presence of mind. And fortunately, as a veteran, I was able to pick up the phone and call. And I went and I talked to somebody. Had I not waited for the tomorrows of my life, then none of this would exist. And had I not met that particular person, Dr. Dingman, who helped me, even though he's a freaking army dude, he was magnificent for me. So he helped. He helped me quite a bit see the value in waiting for the tomorrows of my life. And as a result of that, Quell, exists.
Yeah.
But it's because of that. And I think that I would quote Dennis Charpentier, who I think the absolute world of. He is the son of a dear friend of mine, and multiple, times suicide. And he said, sometimes one more day is worth it. Just waiting for one more day, and it's worth it. And that was his message, and that I would have to share in that give it another day. Pick up the phone, and talk to somebody. One very quick one. When I started the foundation, Rob, I had to, it was all, I'm going to go help the world. I'm going to go help everybody.
Yeah.
And
It's always hard.
yeah, but I thought, I have to tell my story. I have to say, as I just shared with you and your listeners, this is my why.
Yeah.
But I talked to my wife and I said, no, I have to put this out there. I have to put it on social media. I have to put it on my LinkedIn account. I have to share why I'm doing this. And she made it, she said, once you put it on paper, once you write it down and you put it out there, you can't take it back. And I was actually worried that all my buddies from the military would jump me.
Yeah.
How
Oh,
we
yeah.
just beat the shit out of each other when we see a weakness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Dive in.
Yeah. So that's what I was waiting for. Like, oh dear God, they're going to come after me, but I still have to do this. And Rob, the absolute opposite happened. Instead
Crazy.
of that,
Yeah.
the comments that I expected to field, I got emails and texts and phone calls with, I attempted, I live with, I take medication for, I lost this family member, all of the things that supported what I said. So essentially, I think when we talk about it, as frightening as that might be, you open the door and allow others to share. And then all of a sudden, it's not so freaking scary anymore. Like, okay, you and I both talked about this, thinking about contemplating suicide. Well, fuck, look what we've been able to do because we're here and we waited for another day for tomorrow and we trusted each other.
That word is so that trust word, being able to trust not only yourself with being able to tell the conversation, but being able to find that person, find those people that you can trust to tell them, to know that they're going to listen to it, take it in, and just be there. How important is that part of it?
Well, I think it's really important, especially, if we're specifically focusing on talking about our first responder community, these folks, they need to understand something, and at least be aware of it, I should say. There's a period of time, again, with numbers. So from January 2018 through October of 2024, 1,350 first responders took their life. Those are just the documented ones. Those are the ones that are reported. We know that number is incredibly, incredibly low. But just leave it at 1,350 first responders took their own life in that 3.5-year period, or that 6-year period. What that equates to, Rob, is every other day for 6.5 years, every other day for 6.5 years, a first responder took their life.
That can't happen.
It's sobering. It's sobering. And one of the questions, and it was Scallon once again, Chris Scallon, he said, when we had a panel discussion, how many of you in this room, and it was a significant population of people in the room, how many of you in this room, if you had a colleague that asked you to stay back and talk to them because they were struggling with something that they had just experienced, how many of you would stay back?
Yeah.
And all but 2 hands in the room went up at that time. And he asked that same question for 12 different sessions, and every hand in the room always went up.
Right.
And then he had the follow-up question, how many of you, if you were struggling, would ask a colleague to stay back? And nobody ever raised their hand.
Right.
So everybody's willing to listen, but nobody's willing to talk. And there's
huge.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, it's huge. Yeah, you have to just trust your brothers and sisters out there, because they don't want to go to your funeral.
No.
They don't want to do that.
No. And it's so, as 25 years in the fire service now, like, I know the power that your voice can have with the younger generations, as well as the generations that are standing next to you, the same years, of being vulnerable. That word has been scary in the military and in the first responder community for decades. But what did it take for you to find that vulnerability? Like you're saying, like, I'm going to put this out there and it's going to be, they're going to look at me differently. What did it take? What would you say would be like 2 things that you found in yourself to have that vulnerability to be able to do that? Because I think there's so many people out there that are on the cusp, but they don't want to be that vulnerable.
Yeah, you have your tribe, regardless. I'm not a little guy. I have a presence when I go into a room.
Right.
I have chinks in my armor, and it's okay to have that. So two things. Where I got that trust in being vulnerable is I have family who loves me no matter what. And if people
Right.
want to come at me, well, screw them. I don't care. And second is it was so important to me that I would fall on that sword because I'm trying to save other people's lives so that they don't have to experience the type of loss and heartache and grief that I've experienced. And
Yeah.
I think that we have a social and moral obligation to work and to support to the extent of our both personal and professional means each other.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be taking care of each other. And if that means showing chinks in your armor and being vulnerable, then freaking do it.
Yeah.
Who cares? It doesn't, that is not your identity. That's not going to be what people remember about you. So,
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Make sure you go to quellfoundation.org, thequellfoundation.org. Kevin, I always end with 3 questions. Are you ready for those?
ready.
All right. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh, wow.
I know it was a
Be
long time
brave.
ago.
Be brave. Be brave sooner.
Oh, I like that. I like that. All right. Everybody's going through challenges, struggles. If you could give them 2 things that they could do on a daily basis to continue to live forward, to continue to move forward, what would those 2 things be?
I'll tell you what I do. 2 things are I go for a walk in the morning and I look around me. I'm just present for the walk. I'm not thinking about, okay,
Yeah.
what am I going to do next? I'm not on my phone. I'm not on anything. I'm looking around me, just experiencing it. And that just kind of centers me, gives me a little bit of, and I'm not one of those folks who does a lot of that kind of thing, but I just enjoy being present. And the other thing, I look at pictures of people that I care about. That scrolls on my screen
that's
top.
awesome.
I have like 3 or 4 or 5 pictures in a carousel, and they rotate. And sometimes they're either people or the places that I've been that I remember fondly, and it just kind of helps lower my heart rate a little bit, when I'm getting a bit excited.
Oh, I like that. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
All right. Last one's kind of fun. If you could sit at a firehouse table, so in other words, no question is off the table, and with 3 people, they can be deceased or alive, who would those 3 people be?
Oh, wow.
It's a fun one.
Wow. That is one of them would be my grandfather.
Yeah.
Because I really, really admired that man, and I don't think he ever knew how much I did. So I'd like to have that conversation. I'd like to have him in that room.
That's awesome.
I'd like to. Wow, that's a great question. Some of the people who have made a huge impact in this world, Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
Where did you develop the intestinal fortitude to move forward with all the risk that he had?
Oh my gosh.
Both for personal and professional, and with his family life, the risk that he took. What an amazing, amazing man. And geez, I don't know the third person there. Great question. Wow, you kind of suck. You came out of left field with that one.
I love that. That's the best part of it.
Yeah. That is a. You know who it would be, Dr. Dingman.
Oh, no kidding. I don't think anybody knows.
People probably. So Dr. Dingman, he's an officer with the Army. He's a psychiatrist. He's the person who helped me navigate the mental health challenges I experienced when my son went back into prison. I know that man has no idea, and I have reached out and we have connected briefly, but I know that he has no idea the impact that he had, generational, as a result of taking my phone call.
Gosh,
and because of that, everything that happens right now within the Quell Foundation and for years to come, scholarships and generations of students or because that man chose to help me.
Yeah. God, that's cool. Yeah. That's a perfect way. I love that. That's a perfect way to end it right there. Well, I appreciate it, Kevin. Continue to do what you're doing. It's such a, I always say the greatest impact you'll make in life, you'll never know about. And you've made so much impact in this world, and keep doing it. Make sure you go to thequellfoundation.org and find out more. Kevin, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate you very much in our friendship. Thanks.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. And please share this episode with a friend or family member. To find out more about Fireman Rob, or if you have a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.